You don't need to cue this group at all. Hi, I'm Deanna Sumanak from CBC News, and welcome to Canada Lives Here with the cast of Murdoch Mysteries. I feel like you guys don't really need a background briefer on the show, but just in case there's somebody at home who's watching CBC Live broadcast, and by the way, if you are watching at home, thank you so much for following us, and for all the fans of Murdoch Mysteries and of the CBC who can't be here today, thank you so much for joining us. This is a wonderful group. Now let's talk a little bit about Murdoch Mysteries. With a passionate following of loyal audiences at home and abroad, this show is one of Canadian television's biggest historical successes. People watch it in the UK, in France, in China. So really we're talking about an international success here. I can tell you, I mean, I cover the Canadian arts. It always makes me so proud when a Canadian show is watched by people everywhere. And this show definitely does it. Now heading into its 7th season, the continuing one-hour series explores the world of a detective who pioneers forensic investigations in the 1890s Toronto in a quest to solve the city's crimes. Murdoch Mysteries has reinvented the crime procedural investigation drama by incorporating smart storytelling, ingenious inventions, and compelling characters, including some of history's greatest thinkers of the turn of the centuries. We're talking about Nikola Tesla, H.G. Wells, Arthur Conan Doyle, obviously very close to this genre, and Sir Winston Churchill, to mention just a few. And of course, the show has also had some notable appearances and cameos. It has very famous fans, which we'll talk about in a second. But first of all, let me tell you a little bit more about the cast. Some things that maybe you guys don't know, although I'm sure you know a lot. Starting with Yannick Bisson. Now, Yannick's early childhood was spent in Montreal, but it was as a teenager in Toronto that he found his calling. His big break was in the CBC movie Hockey Night, perhaps the most Canadian name of a movie ever. You were destined to be at the CBC. With Megan Follows and Rick Moranis. Ever since then, he has enjoyed great television and film success, including roles in such series as High Tide, Sue Thomas, FBI, and Nothing Too Good for a Cowboy. Just in case you did not know what a cowboy looked like, Johnny, just remember that for us.
Cowboy.
Now, of course, he's better known as Detective William Murdoch.
Hello.
Next up, Hélène Joy, before moving to Vancouver and going on to play in roles on Durham County, Regenesis, and Murdoch Mysteries. Hélène grew up in Australia after studying at the Western Australian Academy of Performing Arts in Perth. She joined the Bell Shakespeare Company in Sydney as well as the Melbourne Theatre Company. We're all very, very lucky she moved to Canada so she can play Dr. Julia Ogden.
Happy to be here.
Moving on to Miss Georgina Riley. By the way, I love it how these two ladies are wearing kind of matchy florals. You should see these two backstage. There's, you know, often there's a kind of an unfortunate stereotype of leading ladies not getting along. Not these two. These two are inseparable. Georgina Riley's career began in England at a mere 10 years of age as a singer on the BBC children's series Number Time. We have quite the international roster here. She later moved to Toronto where her career grew through such films as Pontypool and This Movie is Broken, and most recently on the television series The LA Complex and, of course, Murdoch Mysteries. Georgina is married to Republic of Doyle star Mark O'Brien. It's a bit of a CBC family here. And now next to me, the man who needs no introduction, Johnny Harris, but I'm going to give you the introduction anyway. Because we know this man has no shortage of talent, and I'm not just talking about his impersonation of a cowboy, which was pretty impressive. In his roles in films such as Young Triffy, sorry, I did not want to mispronounce that, and grown-up movie star or television series Hatching, Matching, and Dispatching, one of the best titles though. And of course, Murdoch Mysteries aren't enough to convince you. The fact that he has also performed at the Winnipeg Comedy Festival, the Halifax Comedy Festival, and Just for Laughs certainly should. So there you go.
Thank you, thank you.
And the woman largely responsible for bringing us Murdoch Mysteries, Christina Jennings. Christina Jennings founded Shaftesbury
Take your time with
Films
this part. Please take your time.
here in Toronto in 1987 as the chairman and CEO of Shaftesbury. You know what? What I loved about this crowd is that, you know, I started out as a producer and then became a reporter, so I always feel a little short-shrifted when people behind the scenes don't get enough attention, but not with this group. They love you. So since then, the company has produced many acclaimed series and films, including Bloodletting and Miraculous Cures, Life with Derek, The Listener, and, of course, Murdoch Mysteries, which has been sold around the world. Her work has earned her numerous awards, including Gemini's, Genies, and Emmys. So thank you so much, Christina, for joining us. So my first question is, I'm going to open this up to anybody joining me here. How much have you enjoyed having Murdoch Mysteries here on CBC?
I'm going to start. I just have to say one of the most extraordinary things, and I'll never forget, was around Christmas time. There were billboards all over the city of Toronto, and I thought, we have come home to the CBC. Murdoch belongs here. So it was an amazing moment.
And Christina, while we're talking to you, I wanted to ask you a little bit about this idea. Tell us a little bit about the genesis of Murdoch Mysteries. When did you come up with the idea to start this show?
So years ago, we'd adapted Mordecai Richler, and we'd adapted Margaret Atwood, and we had just done 6 movies based on Gail Bowen's mystery series, Joanne Kilbourne. And sitting on the corner of my desk, her agent had sent a pile of books written by Maureen Jennings. And one day a writer walked into my office and he said, "Have you read them yet?" And I said, no, not yet. And he said, "You gotta read them. They're really good. It's about a really interesting character." So I read the books, and sure enough, my love of history, science, and those characters and time. So that's how it happened. This writer, who actually went on to he ran the first 2 seasons of Murdoch, Cal Coons. He's still with us as a writer and a director, and I really credit him for giving me that little nudge to say, read them.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, if you haven't read the Maureen Jennings books, they are fabulous.
They're great.
I was lucky enough to actually investigate a little bit about the real-life inspirations behind those books when I was doing a story for CBC's The National. And I learned that a lot of those murders that you guys are solving in the show were inspired by real murder cases that we had right here in Toronto. So not all the exciting and grisly stuff was happening in London, right? Basically. So tell me, I want to open this up to the cast. When you learned that you were going to be working on the show that takes place in the 1890s, what were your first thoughts, Yannick?
Well, the thing that really struck me right off the bat was having the opportunity to work on a Canadian show, shoot it in Canada, and have Canadian people, namely my family, be able to watch it. And that was a huge breakthrough for me. So I was really grateful for the opportunity. As far as it being a period show, I was just drawn to the show itself. The period wasn't the only thing attractive about it. It was the character, it was the story, it was the vibe of the show that I found really appealing.
Well, for me, in actual fact, there were 2 movies made. People probably watched the movies before the series, probably, yeah. And so I had done a guest lead, I suppose, on one of them as an evil, murderous killer of babies. And I think I died of syphilis and went mad or something. And it was
just another day in an actress's life. Yes.
It was a cool role, and and that's when I met Maureen Jennings and had a really good time on the set. And it was after that I think Maureen had said to me, which is probably not the way things are supposed to go. There are people you're supposed to go through, but Maureen was like, "I want you as Ogden," and you know. Long time passed, probably over a year, and it did come back around, which was it didn't look like it was something that would be available to me, and so it was pretty exciting when it did. And I love these kinds of characters that are so strident, you know, but also so feminine. A lot of these kinds of characters that are written in modern times are just strident. You don't get the other element. You don't have all of the grace and all of the whimsy and the romanticism and stuff. And so it's really fun to have these characters, and that is a part of the period, to be able to enjoy a character with that kind of spectrum. So I was very excited.
Oh, well, Murdoch had been going for it was 5 years. So I felt very lucky to get to join such a wonderful team of people, and it's such a well-oiled machine. Like it runs so smoothly, and so I was just really excited to become a part of it. And period piece is always fun, especially for girls, because it's different than what we get to wear now, and to learn about the hair and the costumes and the work that goes into the costumes is unbelievable, and they're so beautiful. And the corset isn't always the most fun, but everything else is it's always magical, because you feel it's like being an actress properly, because you get to go into a different time period. So yeah.
So when I watch you in those beautiful dresses, there was one scene in, I think, the Murdoch Trap episode where you're shooting at a skeleton. There's blood splattering all over that beautiful dress. Oh, no, don't touch it.
Yeah, and she loves it. Dr. Grace loves that stuff. So yeah.
Johnny, tell us, how do you feel about it, to the period aspect?
I think with the period thing, when I first found out about it and I had the audition, I thought it was strange that it was going to be a forensic show based in Victorian, at the turn of the century, when forensics weren't very far along. I thought that was kind of a weird idea. A lot of the CSI shows were very popular at the time. Yeah. And, but really, if you look at, in a way, the viewer gets sort of to get in on forensics at the ground level, because Murdoch is also an inventor, and necessity is the mother of invention. So he creates the equipment, and it's not like a CSI show. They scan it with a blue light, send it through a database, and they figure it out like that. But it's a real organic approach to it in our show, and you see him build the equipment, and you understand where he's coming from. And so I thought it was at the inception of forensics, which is kind of brilliant.
Yeah, and I gathered that actually a lot of these techniques that we have today did start back then, that it was, to a degree, it's historically accurate, that people started thinking about those techniques back then.
Yeah, it is very historically accurate, give or take 5 years, maybe, I don't know. But the whole thing of fingerprinting and all that kind of stuff, stuff was all being born around that time.
Yeah, it wasn't just Murdoch that invented all of them, though.
Well, I think we take a little artistic license with that.
But we're going to let him have that.
Most of them.
Now, tell me, you guys have, it's interesting, Helen, you grew up in Australia, so you have a sense of maybe what Australians like to watch and so on. Yannick, you talked about the pride you had in the fact that Canadians, your family and friends, would be able to watch the show. But the show has been so wildly successful in other countries, including cultures that are like ours, like the United Kingdom, but also in China, for example. Why do you think that this show, which is so quintessentially Canadian, resonates so deeply with people in other cultures? Anybody?
Well, I don't know.
I think that's the most Canadian answer we ever got. We don't know why they like us, but they do, so we won't ask questions.
I don't know.
There's no one thing you can particularly sort of point to and say that's uniquely Canadian, but I think there's a sensibility, there's a skill set that we have as makers of entertainment in Canada that sets us apart from all sides, whether it be the creative side, producing. You have to be very shrewd, very smart, and think outside the box to do the things that Christina is able to do day in and day out. There are also the writers that we have, the people that are able to capture the images that we give you each week. They have to think outside the box, because there isn't, a vast sea of money to make these shows. So I think it's just the fact that we're survivors and that we're innovative that people are drawn to.
One of the things I think right from the get-go, we wanted to make a show that appealed to families, that you were able to watch with your children. We wanted to have a show that was a mystery every single week. So if you missed a couple, you weren't out of the loop. So it had that great sense of a mystery. But it wasn't too gruesome, it's not too violent. And the other really important thing was we wanted to have some humor in the series. We wanted a contemporary audience to actually, there are so many, we've done now 6 seasons and all the memories flood in. But I remember that time when you were thinking about a donut, the beginnings of a donut. Or one day when you two were dancing and you wondered if this might one day become entertainment, and you went, no one's going to want entertainment with murder. So we actually want to have some fun with the show, and I think in the world there's a lot of violent stuff on television, and I think we found this unique spot, to be honest, which balances, you know, procedurals and some humor and some fun.
And I think, judging by, you said you wanted a family show, judging by the audience here, mission accomplished, right?
No,
I mean, I have not seen a range of ages, genders like this in a while, so congratulations.
And even looking at the fans that have come out today, you know, I think sometimes we take it for granted, but Toronto is the most multicultural city in the world.
In the world, yeah.
And I think we see that in our show, the beginning of that it was a go-to haven for cultures around the globe that were looking for a better life, and they would come to Canada and Toronto. And even since we've been with CBC, you see more of that coverage of the multicultural facet of Toronto in its burgeoning days.
Let's talk a little bit about the comedy aspect of it, Johnny, while I'm talking to you, because you're responsible for so many of the funny moments on the show.
His aunts, you go to talk to him about his aunts.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about that then.
No.
Christina seems to want you to bring it up. I was just thinking about the fact that shows like CSI, like NCIS, they are so gruesome and largely humorless. It's really serious. And you know, but if you look at original Sherlock Holmes or even the new one with Benedict Cumberbatch, he does have a lot of humor. How important was it to imbue this particular new genre, really, that you guys invented, of a historical mystery with humor as well?
Well, I've had no trouble being goofy in the past, and I guess that's how I got the role. It's funny, you know, in the books, and when I got the character breakdown, when I first had the audition, George Crabtree was sort of the muscle of the group. He was this tall, broad-shouldered, intimidating guy, and I looked at it, I was like, why am I doing this? I'm never going to get this role in a million years. And then somehow I got a call back and went in for a screen test with Yannick. And then I found out they were thinking about changing it up, making it a bit lighter. Maybe Crabtree would be sort of the comic relief of the piece. And I thought, okay, now I have a chance.
And while we're talking about chemistry, I mean, you two have a great sort of bromance chemistry happening, definitely on the show.
Definitely. Yeah.
There's a lot of bromance happening. But moving on to romance, this is for Yannick and Hélène. Fans are obsessed with the William-Julia love story, and I have not seen anything like this, I think, since Ross and Rachel on Friends, where people are so, and you guys are on a break just as frequently as those two. People are obsessed with it. They're really invested in it. How do you two feel about how the relationship between William Murdoch and Dr. Julia Ogden has evolved?
Oh man, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I get to go to work and hang out with these guys. I think we have a very unique set of characters, and as much as, you know, they want to get together, the world is pulling them apart and all of that, it's a tough...
And you wouldn't enjoy it as much if they just got together, would you?
So the answer is no. No, I'm kidding. It's a lot of fun to play that tension. I mean, you know, it's great to have a job that you really enjoy, and it's great to go to work and work with people that you really enjoy, and that's all I have to say on the matter.
They like that answer. Hélène?
I think it's absolutely, I credit the writers being absolutely genius. I don't know how they managed to keep us apart so easy, like for so long. Like how, I mean, it must be so infuriating for you. It's like, but no, almost, like all the time. I don't know. I don't even know this year what's happening yet, but we're about to go into. But
I don't either.
Did you guys watch the season finale? My hair. Well, you know, it's going to be really hard after that to get... What? She's like, just get over it.
Just go for it.
I've heard some rumblings from the writer's room, and you guys will be happy and delighted with every single aspect of this coming season.
There you go. You have it on good authority now. While we're talking a little bit about the ladies of the show, Ellen, when I asked you a question a few minutes ago, you said what you liked about Julia Ogden was that, of course, she's a very progressive woman, and I want to ask this question of you and of Georgina. You're both very modern women ahead of their times, women who are obsessed with medicine and forensics and things that women just did not do that often back then, but still both have that kind of softness and femininity. Tell me a little bit about that. How did you marry that aspect of your characters that is very modern and relatable to women today with the historical accuracy aspect of it?
Well,
The corset.
It's all in the corset.
it's true that the corset just reminds you every moment of your lack of freedom.
No, it makes you stand properly. Like it is a different. Like no one. Like, It totally makes you.
You often hear Helene go before she speaks. There's a very good reason for that.
She can't get a breath. This may lead into another question I think you were wanting to ask later, so I'll just go there. But about the women of the time, and we talk about it being we're ahead of our time, but there were extraordinary women. It's just that we don't hear the stories of those women. Unfortunately, there's far more documentation of the extraordinary men in the world. But there was extraordinary women, and one of the earliest doctors, Emily Stowe, she was even ahead of this time that we're shooting. A good 20 years before that, she was the first doctor in Canada. And yes, they wouldn't let her study here. She had to go to America to learn. Apparently they said to her at the medical school, we won't let you in, and hopefully no women will ever get in. So that's what they said to her in 1865 or something. So, but they went ahead and they did it. It was usually women of means, and we are both playing women of means, so that does help. And so you come with this graceful upbringing, but they had strong minds, and they had to have at that time, and so those things are married. It's only now, slowly over time, that the strongest of women, we don't need to have that much grace. And that grace is falling away. But there's something very charming about it. And I think that's why people find it quite enjoyable, these characters enjoyable, because there is this grace that we're losing over time. But that was what made those women so fantastic, was they had this incredible femininity and grace, and it was forced upon them, really, but very strong minds in that,
Yeah. I feel like you guys are both very graceful, rocking your florals today.
Thanks.
Very ladylike.
We're trying.
Yeah, this is really hard for us. I think I give a lot of credit to the writers in how well they put those two things together for us. And just the amount of research they do, and they brought what I love about, like Helene was saying, like you hear about these women, but like they had sense of humors, and they were probably funny, and they were sweet, and they were people. And what I love about playing Dr. Grace is she loves what she does, and she's really intense, but she's also very playful, especially obviously with Crabtree.
Stay tuned for more on that.
Really? So yeah, I think the writers do really well with that.
Tell me, Helene, you mentioned a little bit about the real historical women, for example, who were doctors, those early doctors. Now, we know that a lot of historical figures have made an appearance on the show. I mentioned some in the introduction, like A.G. Wells or Nikola Tesla, Sir Winston Churchill. Any favorites among those really history greats? It was such an exciting time in history. So much of the way we live today, of course, came into being then, whether we're talking about science or politics. Any of the favorites?
I don't know.
I like Winston Churchill.
Yeah,
that
was
episode
fun.
was a lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun. Yeah.
I thought it was really cool that we had the young Houdini on the show. Like that was cool. Because a lot of people don't know about Houdini. I didn't know anything about him, and I didn't know that he was so brilliant, so young, and it was a cool storyline.
I quite enjoyed having Sherlock Holmes this past season.
That was sort of the ultimate. It was a bit of a showdown, kind of.
Yeah, it was so well crafted, so well thought out. The way they brought him into the show, I I was really impressed with that. I was happy to do that episode, boy.
I was going to ask you about that because Sherlock is so perennially popular and also enjoying a bit of a resurgence right now with Benedict Cumberbatch. Do you, because there is a natural kind of parallel between your character and Sherlock, how much do you try to sort of distinguish William Murdoch from Sherlock? Does it enter into your thinking process at all about the kind of a natural parallel that people might draw between the two?
It was pretty easy to be different because of how sort of extravagant Sherlock could be at times and experimental and a little bit eccentric. Murdoch is somewhat more buttoned down and and that was on purpose. But I think that in some ways that paints me into a box a little bit. I can't sort of get too crazy. But then, when I do step out of that comfort zone, it's useful. Yeah. So it's different, but similar.
I think it was really nice for the fans to see Sherlock come into an episode and kind of to see how,
Absolutely.
Let's talk about some real-life famous cameos. So we know that Misha Bruegger-Gosman appeared on the show, and yes, the Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, had a cameo on Murdoch Mysteries. I don't believe he's done that on any other scripted show. Maybe Rick Mercer, yes, but not scripted shows. Tell us a little bit about that. Johnny, I think you had a scene with him.
I did, yeah. Everybody asked me, if he was good after we shot it, and I couldn't really answer because I did the scene with him, but during the whole scene I have my back to him. So I'm reading a paper and he's just sort of talking over my shoulder. So I didn't really know. I know that he knew all his lines. He came to set prepared, so I could at least say that. But I thought he did a great job in it. Yeah.
What was it like? I'm just trying to imagine. I mean, I've been on many TV sets, but I haven't really been around. I can't imagine what was it like in terms of security. Do you try to be on your best behavior? I mean, the Prime Minister is here. Did it affect the atmosphere at all?
It was a crazy day. It was crazy. We had a lot of people in black suits. There was a lot of people on set, hundreds of people on set, and they were from different camps. There was like the media camp, there were his security, and then all of us. And so it kind of tripled capacity.
There were German shepherds, helicopters.
Yeah, I was getting my makeup put on, and a bomb dog comes walking through the train.
He's not exaggerating. It was a high security.
Yeah, it was a very surreal moment. People bring it up time and again because it was a very unique thing that happened in our country and sort of in television. It was one of these moments. But it's funny, I have to rely on people to remind me because it went by so quickly and I was completely out of myself thinking how cool it was that I didn't really pay much attention. So I forget a lot about it.
One of the really nice things was I'll never forget sitting at my desk and getting a call from someone to say the Prime Minister's office has called and the Prime Minister would like to come to set. It was like, oh wow. And so, but what it actually turned out was that his daughter discovered Murdoch Mysteries, and then she went to her dad and said, I love this show. And then they watched, at that point, I think all 4 seasons in a row over a short period of time. So the day, of course, he came with his daughter. Like, she was the fan, and he had become the fan, and then, yes, he wanted a part, and yes, he wanted to actually dress up with the sideburns and everything. It really...
He had very specific goals in being there, and he let us know about it.
Yep. Yeah. Well, also, actually, what was really interesting, we were standing after he'd done his bit in the green room, and he said to me, actually, Christina, I have an idea for a show. And I thought, oh my gosh, here we go. And it was a great idea. It was the beginning of the National Hockey League, which we actually did that episode, and we credit him with the idea. So that was fun.
Because his line had to do with the National Hockey. It had to do with the Leafs, didn't it?
Something.
Ottawa, I believe.
Was it Ottawa?
Yes.
Are we not speaking of the Leafs right now? Or Uh-oh. Tell me, moving on to less awkward subject matters.
I did like, though, that George Strombolopoulos made the joke when we moved over to CBC that Murdoch Mysteries was the factor that would finally ally Harper and the CBC together. So that was... finally connect the two factions.
I did not say that.
Had to
Johnny
happen.
said it.
All I remember from that day was I was deathly ill. And they were like, be charming. Everyone was just, can you be charming? I was like, okay. So I flubbed a line. I know. It was pretty funny, actually.
It's always
of
like
all
that.
the days.
But I bet he was just as nervous as you guys were.
Oh, I'm sure he was.
Fan of the show. Tell me, speaking of a person who rescued me from an awkward moment involving a certain hockey team, Crabtree has some of the funniest lines in the show. Tell us about some of your favorite Crabtree isms. And I know that Christina mentioned something about ants, was it? The ant?
Oh, about his aunts. Yeah,
yeah.
Crabtree.
For an orphan, he has the most ants of any guy.
Yeah.
That is true.
And they're all named after plants or flowers, which Craig, our props master, pointed out to me in the third season after I'd mentioned several ants. But yeah, Crabtree has a wealth of ants. I think at one point he starts listing them. Murdoch actually asks him, and he starts listing them off in alphabetical order. And he gets to about 15 names, and he's only at C. And we'll never know. Maybe when the series wraps up.
Maybe people don't know this. Johnny actually writes some of his own lines. Don't you?
A lot
I come up with a few lines, on set.
You've written chunks before. I remember that whole thing about the Bible you went on with for a little while there. It was very funny.
Yeah, sometimes they give me some license with my own lines, and other times not so much. Other times I'll be like, I got this hilarious line, and the director will look at me and say, no, not this time, not this time.
Bringing it back to romance, there's no shortage of zingers between your character and Georgina's character either. There's definitely a little developing romance going on between Dr. Grace and Crabtree, and the fans seem just as enthusiastic about that one. How do you guys feel about that?
Oh, it's fun. I think, George is punching above his weight with Dr. Grace, and I think he feels, she's very accomplished, very brainy woman, and I think sometimes George can feel a little nervous about that. He's out of his league, but then he gets moments of reciprocated sweetness from her as well. So.
Yeah, I think she finds him very charming, and his the thing I like the most is his silly ideas sometimes that she tries to be nice about and support him with, but eventually he figures it out for himself that it maybe wasn't the best idea.
And women never do that.
Exactly. I feel very comfortable with that with Mark. I've got a lot of practice in, so.
Careful, he might still be in the building.
I know. Is he here? Is he watching? Okay, good. No.
I want to see the episode where Murdoch gets a little jealous that Crabtree's paying Dr. Grace so much attention.
Do you think we're going to see this happen? A bromance versus romance kind of thing?
Exactly,
It's actually next week.
Good to know.
Tell us, speaking of, I don't know how much you guys can give away, but tell me a little bit about just your relationship with Murdoch. You've now played the role for so many years. How do you see, what's your feeling about how he's evolved, and what can you tell us about the direction he will go in the season to come, which you guys are shooting now?
It's been great. It's been really great. Just take a second and thank you all for watching our show. It's been a really amazing experience in my life, and I thank each and every one of you, and Christina and all of you guys. I don't know exactly where Murdoch is headed at this point in time. I can say that for me as an artist, having a little bit more invested at this point makes it that much more meaningful. I now help on the production side. I'm directing now. I've got a real heavy stake in the game, and it's just the most wonderful thing. And thank you all for making that possible.
I have to to say, I've really noticed this talking to you guys, that the love that your fans evidently have for the show is something you guys really feel, and I can tell you that the atmosphere and friendship between these guys backstage is amazing, and I feel like there's just some sort of a good vibe happening all around. I mean, is this kind of commitment to your fans, is it something that you feel all the time, a kind of an obligation to do them right?
We feel it most of the time. Sometimes it's awkward, though, when you look out and all you see is this. So there's a time for that, but no, it's anybody else?
I feel like what's been interesting is we've been doing this show for quite a long time now, but we were with the CTV, and we used to joke, and it's a little bit, it's not exactly how it was, but we used to joke about, like, I'd really love one poster, it'd be great. They didn't promote it the way the CBC has, and all of a sudden this massive push of promotion, and the audience it's almost like it's allowed the audience to connect with us. Because they were always out there, but half the time they didn't know quite when the show was or something. And now it's all in full force. And so I feel like for us, it feels like it feels like it's starting fresh. Like we're really, it renews your excitement about the whole thing because there's so much energy around it that we didn't really have for the first 3 years or so. So it's fantastic. It's like a slow burn, and it's coming to a...
We're so happy to have you guys at CBC. It just seems like a natural fit. I mean, it's such a Canadian show. It takes place in Canada, deals with Canadian history, has these characters that are at once nice and polite and kind of groundbreaking and revolutionary, which strikes me as a very Canadian thing. Christina, tell us about... we're now going into the 7th season. You guys are shooting the episodes already right now. How do you stay true to what the characters were in Maureen Jennings' books and also what they were in your head when you started the series, and how do you still allow room to evolve them and develop them?
You have to... the books are the books, and the movies are the movies, and the series is the series. And it does change. And you can have an idea, and the writers can have an idea, and then you're in these fabulous people's hands. And you really actually have to go with that. And so, when, Johnny with the humor, I don't think we ever thought we'd get quite to this place of humor, and we're delighted. So I think it is an organic process, and the fans, I've got to tell you, are very important to us. Our writers follow what's being said on all the fan sites, because it's important to us that the fans actually stay connected to the show. And it's amazing how many, fans have given us ideas or thoughts, and we've actually taken those into the room. And so I'm certainly hoping that Murdoch's going to go a couple more years.
There you go. That's what you guys wanted to hear. I was going to ask the question, but I'm glad you brought it up anyway. And by the way, I know that you guys are taking photos. Georgina asked me very politely backstage whether it would be okay if she takes photos of you guys with her cell phone. I'm going to be quietly... Oh, this is so cute. They're all posing for you. We're going to be wrapping up...
I can't get Facebook approval, though, from all of you.
As you know, the rule is no unflattering photos on Facebook. I'm glad you guys abide by this. And there's going to be plenty of time afterwards in the CBC atrium to come by, introduce yourselves to the cast, take photos. So if you do not get a chance to get in your question now, don't worry about it. And we will be proceeding to the question period very shortly. Just one final question. Anything you guys can give away about the 7th season? I heard some stuff backstage, but I've been sworn to secrecy. You don't want to mess with these guys. So anything you guys can tell us about who or what we can expect in the 7th season? Wedding! Da-da.
Wedding?
Wedding?
There will be zombies.
Newfoundland.
Newfoundland.
A sunken, rather large ship.
A United States president.
I think that sounds pretty impressive. Yeah. All together, so like zombies on a sinking ship off the coast of Newfoundland?
She's good.
That's good. That's good.
Okay,
Just in case you guys are looking for an
writer
extra writer. Pardon.
Yeah, you should be our writer.
I have a imagination that's maybe not best suited for television. Thank you guys so much, and thank you to the cast. I want to wrap up this portion and really turn the microphone to you guys with much better questions than mine. I'm sure one of our amazing publicists is going to be walking around, there she is, with a microphone. So if you guys can line up around her and start asking questions.
Deanna, thank you very much. I want to say Havala, thank you.
Oh, thank you. By the way, Yannick asked me where my accent came from because most people think I'm French-Canadian, but I'm actually Serbian. And he just thanked me in Serbian. So the multilingual, the multilingual, Yannick, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm trying to think of what's the response to Hvala, and I've forgotten. Your Serbian is better than mine at this point, clearly. All right.
Yannick, I love that the languages. I'm a linguistics graduate from Mac, so that's great. So one question I had for you, I was really interested in the season finale, which with the Murdoch trap, like how exactly was that working? Was it a trap door or a moving room? How was that?
Do you mean how we built the set?
Yeah, yes, for the, you know, when you kept falling in the trap with Gillies, I was really confused, like how was that actually working?
It's basically he falls in the trap door inside of Darcy Garland's home and straight down and gets taken to the house next door underground. It's difficult because what we had to do is have it be able to be monitored by Gillies, kind of the all-seeing eye thing, and we had to create what would that look like if you had a series of lenses and different things. So the screens that you see in sort of the comet tails and weird distortions are a concept of that. But the cage was hanging off the ground, and it made it basically impossible for him to get out or climb out or anything like that. And I thought the art department did a good job. I understood it, but I read it on paper first. So.
And it was.
And what was that? Like, was that supposed to be like a fake smoke stuff, or what exactly was that? Was this supposed to be carbon monoxide? But what were you using though?
Oh Lord, what was the poison? It was some sort of arsenic poison. Yeah.
So what were you using? Was it like a stage smoke or?
Yeah.
Yeah. These guys are incredibly knowledgeable about the chemical compounds as well. I mean, how many actors know that?
Hi, I'm just going to give you a question from Facebook, but first I just wanted to let you guys know that there's lots of people watching across Canada and from around the world, and they sent in lots of questions. So.
Oh, wow.
And someone from Facebook wanted to know from each of you what the quality or fault that each actor loves or dislikes the most in their character.
Oh, these guys are tough.
Oh, that's a good one.
Wow.
Okay, go.
Sure. Oh, okay.
Did you hear that?
You don't think you have any faults? Oh, you mean as your character?
I don't think she has any fault. I was just thinking out loud.
I guess, well, what I just love how enthusiastic Grace always is, and I like how much she talks, and I kind of like how she's a thorn in Murdoch's side sometimes when she just doesn't get to the point. I guess that's a bad thing too from his perspective. So, yeah.
Gosh. I don't know. I mean, I really like the grace. I was talking about her grace because I'm not very graceful in my life. But the sophistication, the grace, and the sort of open, I don't know, quality of her, I really love that. In terms of what's annoying about her, I'm sure that's to be asked of other people. She certainly annoys Brackenreed. She speaks her mind, and perhaps back then that wasn't the best idea. Over to you.
I'd say the thing that I appreciate most about Murdoch is how he's very analytical and he's able to decipher many things at once. I can hardly concentrate on more than two things at once, like getting somewhere in the car and talking to the person next to me. I miss exits. The thing that I would say I don't like about him is he overthinks things a lot, including his relationship and yeah.
You guys are a very modern couple, as we said. So overthinking and strident females kind of goes together, I think.
Universal themes. That's what everybody wants to see.
Yeah. Johnny?
Well, I think, Crabtree is a smart, loyal, moral, hardworking man with the imagination of an 8-year-old. So,
That's often ahead of its time.
yeah. And he's also pretty stubborn in his own way. So I think that's probably his fault and what's likable about him as well.
Great. Thank you guys so much. Some great questions. Next one?
Hi, guys. First of all, can you give Thomas Craig our regards? Because we miss him and stuff like that.
We don't miss him.
Yeah. My question was, how'd you guys feel working with Michael Cedar? Yeah.
Which time?
Like all the episodes in general, especially the last episode.
I always have a blast with Michael Cedar. We have some weird similar roots with family that live in Perth, Australia. Yeah, and I think he's hilarious. We both had to dress up in green dresses, the identical dresses. That was a really fun day.
He wore it better. He wore it better.
What? Yeah, I think he's a really great actor, and he comes with a really funny energy with that character. He really goes deep into it. It's so far away from himself. So
That's funny. I think a lot of what you see with Michael Cedar is what you get. He's somewhat abrasive sometimes, and it works.
yeah, it totally works.
Sort of jealous of the character. I mean, if you pick anybody in the country who gets to play the Moriarty to our Murdoch, it's that guy. It's Gillies, the evil mastermind, recurring mastermind. So I think it's a great role to have, and he does a great job of it.
I love the way he relishes,
Yes.
what he's doing. That's unique to portray that.
Hi, really terrific show, guys. This is a question for all the actors. You've been playing this role for 6-7 years. Do the writers ever bring you anything where you say, no, there's no way my character would say or do that or react in that way? And how much leeway do they give you to change the lines?
It's a really good question.
It's not often, and when it is, it's minor. We had a situation where we have a 10-year-old girl who has to identify a criminal by his voice. And one of the things that we needed to do was have her in the same room with him. And as a director and as Murdoch, I kind of took exception to that. I felt like we weren't protecting her. And then I took it one degree further. I thought Dr. Ogden would never allow that, being that she's in the scene as well. So that's like twice ever. I think.
It's minor things where you because you're reading it very much from your own character's point of view, you go, actually, I would have figured that out prior to this, or so it's just small things that the writers might not see from your point of view, but most of it is just dead on all the time.
Yeah.
I could never write my own lines. But I do have a medical degree now from being on the show, so that's it's amazing.
Mine. I was like, you can have mine now. Done.
The writing's amazing. I have to use a dictionary all the time.
I recall one episode, as we're shooting an episode, we discover whether we're short or long on time. I think the target is 44 minutes. And we discovered we were short. And so they wrote and added a scene just to fill some time. And the idea is Crabtree and Brackenreid are back at the police station. And Brackenreid gives Crabtree some whiskey, gives him a few drinks. And they sort of start joking around about how annoying Murdoch can be. But that was the one instance where I went to the writers and I said, listen, talk about a bromance. Like, Crabtree is very, very, very reverent of Murdoch. And there was a couple of lines there I was just like, I can't see him stepping out of line and saying this. And so we toned it down. But we kept the scene, and it was funny, just a little tone down.
Yeah.
Hi, Rose from Hamilton.
Hey, Rose.
I just love the way all the characters, you blend so well together and make the show so enjoyable. But my question is for you, Yannick. When you were given when hired and you were told you were given the role as Murdoch, is there anyone or any fictional character or anything that influenced to make the character yourself? Like, for instance, Peter Falk, who played Columbo, he had a crumpled old raincoat he brought from home, and he had a cigar. And Angela Lansbury, she admitted she once played Miss Marple, and she incorporated some of Miss Marple into her Jessica Fletcher character. So is there anyone or any character, anything that has influenced you in making your Inspector Murdoch character so unique?
Batman and James Bond.
Yeah. And that's a lot sexier than a crumpled old coat anyway. That's very good.
Good afternoon. Pleasure to meet all of you in person. We really enjoy the show. I would please like to know, you've had Murdoch's father and half-brother and George's mom on one of the shows. Is there any chance they'll develop that relationships as the show goes on, please?
This is something we discuss often each season. One of the things that everybody, I'm sure, will agree about is that each show can be seen by itself and you're not missing too many pieces of the characters. So it's tough to weave these long storylines into wrapping up a murder in 42 minutes, 44 minutes. But yeah, we talk about that often, especially recently talking about Stephen McCaddy, who's an acclaimed actor. I would be delighted if he would agree to come back and play Murdoch's father again. It's not always easy to get these folks. It's like catching lightning in a bottle. As well as Dylan out in Vancouver, very busy guy. He's always done show after show. He's fantastic.
But that's actually, thank you for the question, because this is something I'm going to take away back to the writers and say, one of the fans today asked that question, so what are we doing in the next 18 episodes of Murdoch in terms of the family of our characters? So thank you.
I think you and I both will join the writing team next season. So there you go. I wanted to thank everybody for their wonderful, wonderful questions and give a little shout out to the Hamilton ladies. I'm from Hamilton and I went to McMaster, so there you go. Oh, that's your daughter? Yeah. There you go. No, I graduated from comparative literature, so close enough to linguistics. Yes, all Canadians know each other. I think that's what we've learned today. Do we have time for one more question? We have time for one more question.
Thank you. I love the show, by the way, and mine is actually, it's not a question, but earlier it was discussed as to why is the show so successful in Canada and in other countries. I think it's because it displays steps by steps how a crime is being resolved. And as I personally watch it, I am curious very often how do investigators at the time of the year resolve a crime when there is technology almost non-existent. And I think that other viewers also feel the same way towards, why we watch it, and it could be the reason why it's so successful.
Great. I was thinking of an example. Do you remember the episode where Murdoch was trying to figure out blood splatter?
Yeah.
And he dressed Crabtree in a dress, and he shot into a pig? Well, again, I think we hear all this stuff on television, but now we're actually seeing it, and we understand it better. So anyway, one of my favorite moments. Thank you again for the question. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the difference, is without means, you have to invent the means, and that's what really makes the show unique.
And it was just really good to see Johnny in a dress.
Very early on, I might add.
That's what the script was really all about. I wanted to thank everyone in the audience, and especially the cast and creator of Murdoch Mysteries. Let's give them another round of applause. Christina Jennings, Johnny Harris, Yannick Bisson, Helene Joy, and Georgina Riley. Thank you guys so much for joining us for CBC's Canada Lives Here. We're so proud to be the broadcaster of Murdoch Mysteries, and thanks to all of you for your wonderful questions. We will now proceed to the photos and autograph part of the day, and thank you to everyone who watched this on CBC Live and on Facebook and for supporting this wonderful event. I'm Deanna Sumanak for CBC News. Yeah, apparently, Facebook.
Great, Deanna.